Oh, it is so much fun doing this program. I'm telling you, it's fun because of Angela and Lisa, and it is fun because of the guests, but it's mostly fun because of you. And I hope that you'll also consider it fun and informative and important that we bring you guests like my next one, who has written a book called Troubled Childhood, Triumphant Life, the subtitle Healing from the Battle Scars of Youth. And while it may not sound like the lightest read in the world, obviously it's important, because even if you haven't become a troubled person as an adult because you were a troubled child, maybe we can talk about your kids and your grandkids too. James Krehbiel, I thank you so much for joining us, particularly on as important a subject as this. Is it possible for someone who has been abused as a child to absolutely, totally, and completely heal as an adult?
Yes, I believe so. I believe that people, if they get in touch with the emotional impact of their past, they're able to rectify some of those problems and move on and to live a productive life.
In order to get there, do they always have to have professional help, or can anybody do it on their own?
I think it's difficult. When you're talking about significant abuse, I think it's important that the person seeks some kind of professional help in order to get to that place.
Tell me about types. Tell me about types of children, because I've read that there are types of children who are free of abuse only because of their personalities, other types of children who seem to attract abusers.
Well, I think that some kids have problems in terms of, the abuse. I don't know that they necessarily gravitate towards abuse. I think that the issue is that many kids grow up in dysfunctional families. They grow up in troubled families. And what I find is that it's difficult for them to navigate that. It's difficult for them to function in relation to the problems that they're exposed to as a child. So what I find is when they come to me, they're typically minimizing the significance of their abuse. And in that respect, they're not getting healing.
You're a licensed professional counselor.
That's correct.
This is going to be your opinion rather than something that I'm going to ask you to look back on statistically to determine.
Sure, Pat.
But based on your career and your practice, what have you found to be the most destructive kind of abuse? Psychological, physical, sexual?
I think that the most difficult abuse is the absence. Parental absence.
Ooh.
Now, some people don't get that, but there's a tremendous amount of pain around parents who are missing in action. Many times we think that it's just the physical abuse that's the most significant, but I believe that the absence of a parent being there can be the most psychologically detrimental to a child.
Boy, you hit a major nerve in the audience right then, because I don't think there's a family out there that isn't saying right now, well, yeah, wait a minute, doctor. Excuse me, a counselor. I know that you aren't a doctor, but you don't have to be in your field. Wait just a second. I have to make a living, or these are tough times. I can't be there all the time. I can't go to the ball games. I can't do this because I got to bring a paycheck home. Those are all legitimate things, are they not?
Absolutely. But if you want to look at what positive parenting is all about, it's about involvement. It's about connection. It's about being at many of the activities, as many activities as the parent can be at. It's about affirmation. It's about nurturing. It's all of those things that are ingredients for positive parenting.
The magical illusion.
Yes.
Important part of your book. Describe that. Define it.
Well, the magical illusion is clinging to this notion that somehow, someday, our parents will morph and become the kind of people that we've always wanted them to be.
So the child has the magical illusion.
That's correct.
For how long?
The child has the magical illusion until they get rid of it. Now there's the key, that people carry that illusion into adulthood, and they act out those same illusions into adulthood. In other words, as children, we perform to please in order to get the admiration and validation of our parents. And when it's not forthcoming, we turn our anger on ourselves. And we come to an interpretation, and that interpretation is, I'm defective. Now, what I see with adults is they bring that interpretation into adulthood. They feel worthwhile, but they're still holding and clinging out hope that somehow their parents or some significant other is going to come and rescue them.
When I read your book, there are elements that are very, very troubling because you paint a portrait of an adult who hasn't come to terms with the reality of his or her abuse. And they all seem to have very, very difficult times, for example, taking on risk.
Correct.
At what expense?
Well, they take on risk at the expense of living with self-defeating thinking into the present. They carry these worn out beliefs and assumptions and interpretations they had during childhood into the present, into the here and now.
So I better not try this, I better not take a chance on this, those kinds of things?
Well, one of the childhood interpretations is I must avoid conflict at all costs. I must avoid risks at all costs. God forbid that I should try to do anything new because I could get hurt, or someone could hurt me, or something awful could happen,
so
or the shoe could drop.
You remain immobile then.
Absolutely.
In your life. But is there also danger that you can become an abuser?
The danger, the risk in reference to...
If you are an abused child, I've so often heard
okay.
that the child of an abuser, a psychological abuser, a physical abuser, someone who has really gone through some damaging times growing up, will often then perpetuate that
Absolutely.
same kind of behavior as an adult.
I call that psychological leakage. What happens is when people are not insightful and they move into adulthood with their same worn out, self-defeating belief systems, they're more prone to repeat the same cycle of dysfunction into adulthood. So then we need to ask ourselves, how do we break that pattern? And what I find is that people do one of two things. They're one of three things. They either dwell on the past, poor me, they feel victimized. They avoid the past, which is just, intellectualizing, minimizing the significance of things. Or they process the past. Processing the past is different, which means that somehow they look at their past and they come to understanding the full emotional impact of what happened. In that case we're talking about abuse.
Well, we're going to take a look at the near future. I'm talking about Friday, when our guest is going to be appearing, talking about the contents of his book at Changing Hands Bookstore in Tempe. Now, the immediate future means that I'm going to be joined by a part of the McMahon group that you may not have met before. Oh, yeah, you know Angela, but you don't know her as someone who is academically skilled and schooled in this same field. And she's going to be talking with my good friend, who happens to be James Krehbiel, about exactly these things from a mother's standpoint. This is Pat McMahon.